save you. But I pray that the decision, because some of the bubble decisions, we'll talk about this later, and you'll be shocked how right I am, is because the Nets know who they're getting in the offseason. I don't want to keep talking about Anthony Davis because there's some things that have happened. The CBA is going to change. A lot of money is going to be made. It's been messed up by this year, losing the money in China like that probably costing the NBA up to about $1.8 billion to $2.2 billion. Missing out all of these games in this abbreviated playoffs, that's going to cost them tons of money, and it's going to affect the CBA. But I believe Sean Marks, his lack of doing anything, especially not making a trade during the trade deadline, is because he knows something. And what he knows should not affect this team for this playoffs. Let Rodions play. Let Karis LeVert go off.
So let me ask you something. Let's play a quick game. I'm looking at the starting, who both teams have been starting more recently. So you got to assume. So Jared Allen will be guarding Gasol. Do we think? So then we think Kurucs. Who gets the Siakam? If Kurucs is starting, I guess does he start out on Siakam, or are they going to put someone smaller like Temple or LeVert on Siakam? Because then everything gets all out of whack. Unless you think Kurucs. I feel like Kurucs has to start if you're playing Siakam, and then I guess you do LeVert, Harris, and Temple have to play on Lowry, Anunoby, and Van Fleet, with I guess LeVert maybe on maybe LeVert on Lowry and Harris on Van Fleet and Temple on Anunoby, because Anunoby I guess is the one you're least afraid of.
And I'm terrified of Anunoby. I think he's a tank of a short shooting guard. He could bully you inside. He likes to take the long three. Not the long three, but he likes to take the three in general. And I'm scared. They just have. Like I said, the only way they can make this a game is if they make it a track meet. They've got to get out and run, and they've got to get out and finish on these guys, because that, with a mixture and a heavy dose of just Karis just going at them, that's the only way we win. Because so the first matchup, right? Who's our point guard? Are we Tyler Johnson now? Is Tyler Johnson our point guard, starting point guard? This is hilarious, by the way.
Well,
a team that started the season with Kyrie Irving and Spencer Dinwiddie, maybe the best 1-2 punch in the NBA.
I don't know how they I feel like they have to start Kurucs, and I guess Kurucs guards Siakam, because I don't know.
I don't see Kurucs on Siakam at first. I see Kurucs on Ibaka.
But Ibaka, they've been playing mostly off the bench.
Oh, really? I didn't know they made that move.
Yeah, they've gone a little smaller, and they go Gasol, Siakam, Van Vliet, Anunoby, and Lowry. So that's what's weird, is that
they've gone smaller.
If you put, I guess you could look if one of those guys, whoever's the worst shooter of them all, you can put on a worse defender and just kind of do the whole, when Tristan Thompson played on Harrison Barnes in that final, and just kind of let him roam, but he's not really going to scare you. But the issue is that, as you mentioned, everybody on the Raptors this year is having career shooting years. Like Powell, Anunoby, Terrence Davis, Van Fleet, all these guys can shoot. So that's why I don't really get what you do from a matchup perspective.
So for me, like I said, you've got Fred VanVleet as shooting guard, great defender, but Karis has size on him.
Yep.
I don't want to look at it from the perspective of what we can't do, right? Because Karis is basically the point guard. He's the lead ball handler in this offense, right? So you might see them switch Lowry on them, but I think Tyler Johnson is a good little matchup, and he could get some buckets off of Fred VanVleet. He also has to annoy him back on the other end.
Yep. Yeah. The big thing at that point will be because you're right. There is, which I didn't even realize, there is a much bigger height advantage than I realized. I mean, Lowry is 6 feet, VanVleet's 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
LeVert's
it's not a real 6'1" either. I don't believe that's 6'1", but yeah.
So the question is, but then the question is, can either of them really post? Because Lowry and VanVleet are much thicker than both of those guys.
Yeah, you don't want to post them. You don't want to post them. It's just the Nets won't get bullied. Is all I'm thinking, and OG is a younger guy, and maybe Garrett Temple could just, old school. You know what I mean? Kind of like, because he's not such a great player that you couldn't potentially like looking at this roster right now. I think they could be had. Am I crazy?
I mean, they're not like the thing is about the team is that a lot of these guys you're still kind of like, you kind of look at the season they had this year, and it feels a little bit like, all right, this is like the classic, like really good Eastern Conference regular season team, but could I see them tightening up in a playoff series where they don't have a number one guy? Look, the other thing that people haven't talked about.
I mean, we are talking about a 53-19 team. This is a very good team. This is a well-oiled machine. I'm just going, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby. Carries could go off. Why not? Am I crazy? Why can't Carries go off?
Look, the thing that I think also people haven't been talking about as much is like Siakam's games have definitely been on the lower end over the last, like, if you go to like the middle of February, end of February to March to then the bubble, like he's not the same. He hasn't been the same guy that was getting 30 and even scoring in the 40s sometimes in October and November.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that obviously does make a difference. Like, and on top of the fact that, like, I'm sure you remember this as like a basketball junkie, like, until the finals, like, people kept on basically looking at Siakam and they were like, dude, like, this guy can't be a number 2 guy. Like, he's totally fallen out in the big moment. So now the pressure is really on. And last year he got to have Kawhi basically. I mean, Kawhi carried them. They were down 2-0. They were down 2-0 to the Bucks. And if it wasn't for the shot Kawhi made, they would have gone to overtime. And I think the Sixers kind of had them at that point. So I think Siakam, from a playoff perspective, has a lot to prove.
Yeah, and I have like a weird trust in Jacques Vaughn. I feel like Jacques Vaughn can come up with something for this. So in the last 5 games, these guys are the Toronto has been Toronto. They're 5-1 in the last 5 games. This is a beast of a team. This is a monster of a team. The Celtics gave them an ass whooping, and that's it. Otherwise, 125-121 versus Philly, 114-106 versus the Bucks, 108-99 versus Memphis, and then 109-99 versus Orlando, and only the Boston Celtics gave them a game, and even that, I'm finding some solace in because the Boston Celtics is another small team, and maybe the way against these guys is to run on them. Jesus, I'm gonna miss Spencer Dinwiddie, dude. If Spencer Dinwiddie, I see a path to beating them. But if Spencer Dinwiddie was here, I'd be talking hell of a shit. Because if we could just pour it on them, I think we could do something. I just don't know if you could trust the TLCs and Well, here's a good spin on it. TLC is Spencer Dinwiddie. You know, a fringe G League guy that came to the Nets and became somebody. Maybe he will fit in. Is that a possibility? Can I dream, Sam?
I mean, the TLC thing is so mind blowing to me because I thought was the worst player on the team for most of the regular season.
Same. I thought he was pure trash. Same.
I believe it. So now at this point, anything goes. Honestly, like I'm willing to believe any. I mean, some of the moves TLC was making in some of these games, I was like, we could have used this 5 months ago. But by the way, the one other LeVert point that I wanted to make that I think is super important is Nets fans should remember, and I hope the Raptors remember, is like LeVert in a big way took over that Sixers series last year. Like,
yeah.
LeVert went toe to toe with that team and was keeping the Nets team where Russell was just totally smothered by Simmons, and even still, LeVert like would get switched on to having bigger guys, and that's another long, big team, kind of like some of the forwards on the Raptors, and LeVert was cooking them.
Right.
And so LeVert has shown on a big stage that he can do this, and that was also going to Philly and the whole home and away system. This is obviously more of a controlled environment. So I think LeVert has that to kind of stand on and know that he's came up huge. Like I was at game – which game was it? I was at game 4, the non-Jimmy Butler game. I think it was game 3 or game 4. And like – and the Nets weren't playing that well, and he was the only reason why it was a game. Like he just totally took over. And so – I can't remember. He may have. I don't know if Siakam's had one game like some of LeVert's games against Philly.
He's had some good games. He's had some really good games against Philly. But again, that's with Kawhi, they're gonna have to get on his back and go all the way. And I think Lowry can help carry that. Like we really don't give him enough credit. He's a good bulldog of a point guard. Dude. That's about it, man. We're at the end here.
We crossed.
Give me your playoff prediction
for the Nets series.
Yes.
I unfortunately I got to stick to what I did in a pool. I got the Raptors in 4. Unfortunately, I think it's a sweep, but I think the games are close.
Totally fair prediction. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm going to say that the Nets in 6.
Whew. Wow! If you bet that in Vegas right now, you're going to be making a lot of money.
I'm going to log on to this episode has convinced me. I think I like I've been saying all day on Twitter. Come talk to me about Karis LeVert. All the Nets fans that want to trade Karis LeVert for Bradley Beal. Come talk to me about Karis LeVert after these playoffs. Because there's always the NBA is cyclical. It happens all the time. There's always these players that people may not have known from college, don't have the name recognition, wasn't a lottery pick, and you have to look at the players with an objective eye. And I think these players have these signature games where they prove who they are, and I think this is the moment. This is the moment for Karis. I believe in the kid. And I think he's going to make a lot of Net fans eat their words.
You ready?
You ready for this, man?
I'm ready.
New York City, our Brooklyn Nets fans at large, we head into the playoffs together as one Nets fan base family. Let's support the team. Let's let's forget about whatever's going to happen next year. That's next year. Next year is not even promised. Let's fucking go Nets. I'm Yves Darbouz. This is my partner, Sam LaChow. We are the front office. And we out. Sam, let's do it again next week.
Let's do it.